What is up, Wizards fans? Welcome into another Believe Wizards podcast. I'm Matt Berno. Obviously, we're coming to you on the heels of the Wizards losing what was kind of a interesting first preseason game of the year. I mean, there's some positive takeaways, some negative stuff. We'll get into it here in a minute. But first, we're brought to you by Stateside Vodka and their Surfside Hard Iced Teas, hard lemonades. Every flavor you can think of is delicious. Honestly, I wouldn't blame you for chugging a couple right now after the Wizards lost 125-98 to the Toronto Raptors. Also brought to you by BetOnline. It's your number one source for all your summer sports this season. NFL is probably the big thing going on, but you could also bet on NBA preseason on there, I think, too, if you're a total degenerate, but a judgment. Get the latest news, scores available for your favorite teams. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet online where the game starts. All right, so yeah, kind of buried the lead there. The Wizards lose 125-98. Honestly, the game was like kind of over like halfway through the first quarter. It felt like in terms of it being like a competitive basketball game. So not ideal. Toronto outscored them 34-16 in the first quarter. It was 22-22 in the second quarter, 36-35 in the third quarter, and Toronto outscored them 34-24 in the fourth quarter. But that was relatively, meaningless, just given the like benches were cleared and things like that. But yeah, the first quarter they just got absolutely punched in the mouth, and guys, the Wizards were playing more, I would say, rookie caliber guys than Toronto was early in that game. So I think there was just a little bit more like learning curve and things like that. But yeah, there's just more good than bad here, and I don't think the score ultimately matters all that much. So what we should focus on are just the play of the rookies. I think each of them kind of showed something that you can take away as sort of like a positive from this game, which is cool. So like seeing that. But I don't know. Let's just sort of like go through the stats here a little bit and hit you up with the box score. I don't want to read stats at you the whole time, counting stats especially, but it's an easy way to kind of organize thoughts and go down the list here. So Alex Sarr was the player of the game from honestly all standpoints. I think you could make a case for Jordan Poole, who was also very good overall, I thought. But got to give this one to Sarr, just given how the summer league went for him. He went 6 of 8 from the field tonight, 3 of 4 from three. They looked clean and efficient. Only 3 rebounds, which I thought was a little underwhelming, but he also played a decent amount of minutes in the first half next to Valanciunas, who was scooped up a couple away from him. Kyle Kuzma took a couple from him. So not the biggest deal in the world, but he will have to rebound better longer term. And Valanciunas did not play at all in the second half. So that would have been the opportunity for Sarr to get more involved on the boards there. But Sarr also had 4 assists. I think that's like a one like sneaky good takeaway from his play, thus far in a Wizards uniform, including summer league, has been the passing. I think that's nice to see. Did have 3 turnovers, but you can live with that with him at this point. Like I'd rather see him trying to make productive reads, and the ball doesn't stop with him, which is something you could probably not say about Valanciunas. It looked like the ball stuck with him a lot, which is a little disappointing. But they'll figure it out. They'll get into rhythm and stuff like that, and kind of work through all those things. But Sarr also had one really nice block. There was a stretch late in the first half where he had, I think, in order like a rebound, a block, a roll for a dunk. He did a 3 shortly before that. So all kind of positive stuff from Sarr overall. He looked a little lost early, kind of, like baby giraffe out on the court, like, and especially when he was matched up with Kelly Olynyk, it looked like somebody, a veteran playing chess while he was playing checkers, but he settled in, and I thought that was cool to see. Honestly, if just seeing more good than bad with him, great. He's not going to shoot 75% from the field a lot of nights this season, but hey, we can kind of live with that. Shout out to Jean Paul, Area 11T in the chat, and it never makes no sense. Appreciate you guys. Jean Paul said, big rebound problem still. I agree. I thought Valanciunas helped with that a decent amount early. Like, he looked sluggish and winded just from like player intros, but he does end possessions on the defensive glass, so I appreciate that. Area 11_T says, I still miss Denny. I know. I saw the clip from Chauncey Billups talking about how Denny is the best player on the Blazers right now, and it's like, that trade, we'll see. I obviously love Bub, but there may have been a way to go get Bub and still keep Denny. I don't know. It never makes no sense. As honestly, really positive 30-point blowout. Liked how Poole, Sarr, Bilal, Keyshawn all played. Agreed. Shout out to Fitz in the chat. Said need some offense outside of Poole. Yeah, I mean, you got some from Sarr tonight. It's just the question of, is that going to be very consistent? Wizards fans collectively seem to have soured on Kyle Kuzma, is sort of the read I got just from the echo chamber of fans I pay attention to. But he's not going to shoot 1 from 7 or 1 for 7 from the field very often. Did have 5 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 block, but 3 turnovers weren't great. He was a -2 for the game, which I was a little surprising considering that he was out there for a lot of the first quarter when they got hammered. So must have been good later in his minutes. But yeah, I agree with you, Fitz. I gotta have to have like a consistent stream of offense there from some people. I think Brogdon will probably help with that. And Kispert is gonna be, not normally that bad. I thought he was really underwhelming overall tonight. He only went 1 of 3, but he forced a couple bad shots at the rim. They kept talking about how he's bulked up. I think sometimes it takes guys a while to kind of settle into like new frame and when to use it. But last year he was really effective finishing around the rim. Again, box plus minus or just general plus minus. Sorry, in a preseason game is probably like disgusting to look at or even pay attention to. But Kispert was a -26 tonight, and it really felt like it. Like they felt worse when he was on the floor. I don't think that'll happen a lot this season, but he does have to shoot the ball at a high percentage to offset that he doesn't give you much else. So we'll really see what that looks like from him moving forward. Sam Hershey said very happy with Bilal's game. Would like to see him be more aggressive on the glass. Totally agree with that. Yeah, he was floating a little more around the perimeter. I did like that he got his hand on a lot of balls, and I appreciate that too. Also, the thing with what you saw out there on the court tonight, with just kind of all the young guys, is you can really start to see the blueprint of what they're trying to do in action. And there were a lot of possessions where they didn't really convert or get the steal or get the full turnover, but they just sort of disrupted possessions by getting, fingertips on balls and stuff like that. And I realized maybe how fingertips on balls just sounded, but can't help myself sometimes with the silly stuff like that. Um, yeah, but the deflections were big. Like they've got a lot of length, positional size. And when you have a situation where you have like Koulibaly, Keyshawn George, Bub, and Sarr out there, like that's kind of like switchable for a decent amount of those positions. So I kind of like that sort of stuff. But yeah, overall, I was happy with Bilal's game. He wasn't super involved later in the game, but we saw some cool stuff early. Couple mid range pull ups. He was 4 for 6 from the field. 1 of 3 from three, which you can totally live with. Only the 2 rebounds, like Sam pointed out, but had 2 steals, 2 blocks. I think a couple more possessions where he got fingertips on stuff. So just want to see more of that from him. Just continuing to be like a chaos agent on the defensive end, and really like pushing people to try to make plays around him. Like you want him to be like the Ed Reed of your Wizards defense, where like teams aren't even trying to do stuff on his half of the floor. But that's okay. So we'll see how that goes. Just kind of continuing to run down how folks looked here in general. I mentioned Valanciunas, like I said, it's just sort of sluggish and out of shape. He didn't play in the second half there. That's probably we're slowly easing him in conditioning wise. He is a big boy. Let's hit Jordan Poole, right? Of just the older guys now. He's still not that old, but he's in the veteran half of the roster, I'd say. Went 5 of 9 from the field, 2 of 5 from three, 4 of 4 from the free throw line. Only 1 rebound, which is fine. But 6 assists, which is great, to 0 turnovers. Like, yes, like that's what I want to see more than anything. And we talked about this on a previous pod. Like, if he can shoot efficiently and just get other people in offense, no, no problem for me on the Jordan Poole front. He was like fine defensively, I guess. I don't know. He doesn't really get down into much of a stance, but that's not why he's out there. You just need him to be serviceable. And I think his defense was far from like the biggest problem overall. So hopefully in real regular season games, you start to see even more buy-in from him on that end of the floor. But just literally no nits I'm willing to pick on him offensively tonight. I thought that's the kind of Pool you want to see. 16 points in only 21 minutes when you can do that on good efficiency and getting others involved is really what they need from him if he's going to continue to be like the starting point guard for the rest of the year. So all good there. A couple other things just from some of the other periphery guys here a little bit. Patrick Baldwin Jr. played about 14 minutes tonight. Johnny Davis played 16. Marvin Bagley played 13. Like there is a roster cut coming. It won't be Bagley because he makes too much money. I didn't love the Bagley minutes tonight. I tweeted out, that he should be like, I think the guy thinks he's like Nene when he's really like Trevor Booker. And it's just some of the stuff he does. It's just Like, what are you doing out there, bro? Like, just be the energy guy. Beat your guy down the floor, score around the rim, roll efficiently, put back some offensive rebounds. Like, that's really what I want to see. He was 2 of 5 from the floor. Only had 3 rebounds tonight, finished with 8 points. It was fine. Didn't see any of Rashawn Holmes at all tonight, so I don't know what that means for the rotation moving forward. But especially in a situation like this was the game I would have loved to see way more Vucevic. Like, I think you largely know what somebody like Bagley is, so do you need to give him those minutes? And the fact that Vucevic got 8 and Baldwin Jr. got about 14, not ideal. PBJ was 1 for 4 from the field, 0 of 2 from 3. Another thing I tweeted out, like, I'm sure it's happened. I can look up the stats and see that it has, but I can't remember seeing Baldwin Jr. hit a wide open 3. I remember like 1 or 2 like crazy step backs, but never just like the wide open catch and shoot jumpers that you need him to make. And it's just hard to have a roster spot for a guy. And they were hyping him up on the broadcast of how he looks more filled out and things like that. But just you have to hit open shots if your job is to be like a stretch forward on the team. And he just has not, hit them consistently enough, in my opinion. So if there is a roster, casualty coming at this point, it's gotta be him, I think. Fitz is asking about roster cuts in the chat and if Johnny Davis is on the chopping block. I mean, Davis is definitely one of those guys that is playing for his life, but when you compare the 2 guys, I thought Davis was sufficiently, more impactful than Baldwin Jr. tonight. He was only 2 of 4 from the field, but 1 of 1 from 3, 3 of 8 from the free throw line, which is not good, and the free throw shot looked hitchy again, sort of this, like, late, like freezed elbow thing going on, but got to the line 8 times. If he hits on a couple more of those, it's a little more helpful. He had 8 points. It just I don't know, man. I feel bad for Davis. Like, he's our pick, so I of the 2 of them, I'd rather kind of have a little loyalty hit to him. He had 2 rebounds, 1 assist, no steals or any blocks, but it felt like he was kind of in the right places defensively. He rotates really well. Like, the hustle is more there. So I think if you're just gonna keep one of those 2 guys, I don't really know what Davis is in the league long term, but ultimately, I don't think either of them end up being impactful players for the Wizards long term. So I would just keep the guy that I think is going to play harder and push other people in practice more. And at this point, I think that's Davis. So that's the direction I'd go. Either way, just the fact that Vucevic only played 8 minutes, I think, is disappointing. He was 4 of 4 from the field, 1 of 1 from 3, 1 of 1 from the free throw line. Only 1 rebound. Like, he had 10 points, like, your shooter from him. He's everything I think people wanted Baldwin Jr. to be, except he's bigger and moves the ball a little bit more fluidly. Baldwin Jr. actually like kind of a ball stopper sometimes too. So like that's another sort of negative, for him. But I was like, would have seen like those minutes be flip flopped. But I guess maybe if you're still trying to figure out what to do with that roster cut, maybe this is more of the chance to do that. Whereas, at least with the 2-way, Vucevic is going to be here long term. The other thing with Baldwin Jr. is you could probably still get him to commit to a 2-way contract at this point. I don't think anyone else has seen enough that they're going to pick him up. And he's still within the first 4 years of his NBA career, so he's eligible for a 2-way. So that's probably what I'd try to do if you still are intent on seeing more from him. I think personally, I've kind of seen enough of that experiment to make up my own mind, but it is what it is. And the other guy I would have liked to just see more from tonight, with like in terms of minutes, is Jared Butler. To me, is an NBA rotation player. He's only 1 of 4 from the field, but just looks like kind of confident and poised for the most part. So he's someone I would just like them to find a way to find minutes for. And I don't really know how you do that with this guard group. Like, this tonight was without Brogdon, and they still couldn't really get him in there. But he's just a calming, steadying presence with some of these other younger guys. So I think that's somebody I would just like to see them figure something out for. And maybe it's situational when other guys are out. He'll kind of, be that utility guard to rotate in there. And that's maybe the most you can hope if you're somebody like Jared Butler on kind of a cheap contract. And Anthony Gill had 8 minutes. He was fine. Champagny had 7 minutes. And honestly, I would not have even remembered that had I not just looked at this box score. He got really close to a trillion tonight, where he put up no stats in the box score essentially, but it says he has a steal and had a turnover. So that's great. I truly do not remember him playing, which is not good, not great. On a two-way contract, not the end of the world. It just eat up the minutes at the end of the preseason game. It's fine for him. Just run down a couple other notes I had here in my little notebook. If you guys have questions in the chat here, I'll definitely start taking them at this point. Uh, you know, just to get everybody's perspective here. I appreciate the people have been weighing in as we go. If you are watching this on YouTube, please hit that like button for us. That means so much because it helps this, like the algorithm, make this findable for other Wizards fans. So that's always huge if you can hit that for us. Also, the subscribe button is great. I think the metrics for us to know if these are meaningful post game and pregame shows are if people are subscribing and we're growing the channel and things like that too. So if you watch these and you haven't already hit that button for us, that helps us tell, the people are liking what we're doing and we should do more of these. So if you like the content, hit us up there. We appreciate that. Hostway said in the chat, Keyshawn George does a lot of stuff. I agree. I thought he looked pretty fluid out there. The shooting looked really good. He had those 2 consecutive threes at one point that was just like, oh, okay. That looked pretty darn clean. He was only 3 of 8 from the floor, 2 of 6 from 3. But even the ones he didn't make, I just appreciated that he like confidently put them up. And I already started to find myself wondering, like, if they can't work out a deal with Kispert, can George be the Kispert replacement? He's probably a little savvier with the ball. I don't think he'll finish quite as well around the rim as Corey does. He's not the cutter yet that Corey is, but creates a little bit more for himself and others, I think, longer term here. So from just a designated shooter perspective, that might be kind of the long term replacement. So it's going to be interesting to see what that looked like. Jean Paul, and let me know if I'm saying your name right in the chat for me. I don't know. Said I think that Bud rushed it a little too much. I think it's probably Bub. Yeah, I mean Bub wasn't great tonight in my opinion. He was 1 of 8 from the field, 0 of 4 from 3, but got to the line a decent amount. Used his frame. He was 5 of 7 from the free throw line, which is cool. Had 2 rebounds, 1 assist, 3 turnovers, 3 fouls. He looked like a rookie. Like it's going to happen. I think I was trying to caution people maybe not get overly excited about summer league. Like, yeah, it was great to have something positive happening when Sarr was struggling a little bit, but this is the typical stuff they're going to go through. Like, I think there are going to be stretches where he finds himself kind of out of the rotation because the confidence is low or whatever the case may be. But it's okay. Like it's just really it's exactly what it was. It's a preseason game. You'd rather have him shoot bad in a game like this and figure the rest out long term. From Hostway, what was your favorite lineup combo tonight? Um, hmm. Excuse me, I'm coughing a little bit here. It is hard to do these by yourself, man. I don't know how people do it. I don't know that I had a favorite combo necessarily, but I did like the lineup that started the second half, which is basically just inserting Corey Kispert in there for Jonas Valanciunas, which was great because they played a little faster and a little more fluidly, and I thought that worked for them. They were able to play with more pace. I thought that helped Poole. I thought that helped all the other young guys, and I thought Sarr looked a little more comfortable. It's really the matchups where like you have a big offensive presence on the other side that you can't see Sarr playing by himself as a center. And Jakob Poeltl was a good defensive center. He's kind of fallen off here a little bit, but he's not imposing on the offensive end. So if you're Sarr, you don't have to worry about getting like bullied or somebody kind of dictating play. So I think that was cool. I hope they go with more Sarr at the 5. That's really, we've talked about this ad nauseum on the show here. Like that's really going to be his bread and butter for him to be an impactful player and create mismatches long term. So if you can start to see some of those things now, that's great. Sam Hershey said, "Is this the starting lineup we saw today? What we see the first regular season game?" I don't know about that. I wouldn't kind of be shocked if Sarr went back to the bench and Brogdon, ends up back in the starting lineup. That's probably what I would have assumed they were leaning towards, something like that. But the hand thing could linger. He could miss enough of camp that they don't want to start Brogdon. Also, the health is an issue with him all the time anyway. And if Sarr keeps looking like this, like, cool, like, keep playing him. I mean, I don't think you saw anything wrong with him tonight that would dissuade you from not starting him. It's just they can't not start Valanciunas. But I think I've already seen enough to know that I just don't see this experiment ending up with them getting like the return back for him that they ideally want to get back in a trade. So yeah, you know, that's gonna be tough. Like, how many minutes do you commit to guys like that? And do you trade him for almost nothing just to get him out of here at some point, or do you keep him just to be a big body? Like, one of these centers has to move on at some point, and I just don't know which one of them is gonna show another team enough to bring back anything in return for a trade, unless he's salary filler for some other deal. But Valanciunas is kind of slow and plodding. He's bad defensively around the rim. He does rebound well and in possessions, which is his biggest value added. Rashawn Holmes is Rashawn Holmes. Bagley was kind of spazzy and stuff like that. So it's just, who is the guy that some other team looks at and like, yeah, that's what we need. Honestly, if I were a team looking for a center, I'd be going to Portland, or I'd be honestly going back to this Toronto team and trying to get Kelly Olynyk before I'd be trying to get, any of these other guys. If I needed a playoff center right now, I would much prefer Kelly Olynyk to any of the big guys. Right now, Professor Chaos says there's no reason to start Jonas right now. I don't know if there's no reason. I think if he can play his way into shape a little bit more, that's different. They were just so bad defensive rebounding last year that that's the sole reason he's on this team, is to just clean up the glass. And until Sarr and some of these other guys start to rebound, to their size or at their pay level or pay grade or whatever, like, he's just going to have to be out there a certain amount of the time. I'm with you in the general spirit of like it's not providing a whole lot, especially if you're not going to be able to flip him down the road. So at some point they're going to have a tough decision to make with that, or he could just magically start to look better. And hey, the preseason is the preseason. I'm very excited to get Jihadi's perspective on this and how much we should read into stuff like that as somebody who's been through NBA training camps, especially for veterans. I think you saw some Kuzma coasting a little bit here tonight. Largely like checked out for stretches, especially in the first couple minutes there. So we'll see. Half Stefan said JV was bad on the Pels last season and was just in the way. I don't disagree with that. I tried making that case to people when they signed him, and I got a couple of tweets that like, "Hey, are we too good to tank for Cooper Flag right now?" It's like Valanciunas is not, swinging us too far in that direction. The one thing he does at a high level still is get defensive rebounds, and honestly, like like I don't know how meaningful is that if you're just a detriment on offense from a pace and spacing perspective. So, like I said, that's going to be kind of an interesting one here to figure out as we go. Just a couple other thoughts here as we start to wrap this one up a little bit. Like I said, Cool Volley looked a lot sharper skill wise. I thought that the ball handling was much better. Just looked a little like swaggery, but I thought he did that to start last season too. So it's just, can he keep that confidence up over the course of the season when things don't go so well, or he has that bad shooting stretch? So that'll be interesting to see. But he looked a little bigger. He looked all that. Uh, Sarr moves the ball well. Talked about that. You can start to see the blueprint. Keyshawn threes were great. And yeah, it's just really that last roster spot, I think, is the last big takeaway we're going to get from this preseason for the rest of the time here. It's got to be probably down at this point to Patrick Baldwin Jr. and Johnny Davis. So I don't know. Really interested to see. If you're listening to this, drop us a chat as you go through it and let me know who you would make as the final roster cut. Otherwise, going to start to wind this one down. I really appreciate everybody tuning in right now at 10:30 on a Sunday night after a preseason game. That's pretty awesome. Probably last question-ish we'll take here from Hostway. Is Jared Butler probably the odd man out in the rotation with everyone healthy? It kind of seemed that way, but from just how they were running things tonight. But again, maybe they've seen enough from him already that they didn't feel the need to get him a ton of minutes. But it's probably the indication, like, if you're really committed to getting Bub some minutes here and he looks solid enough to handle them, there's probably enough ball handling out there between him and Poole. I mean, Poole only played 21 minutes tonight, and they still only found like 8 for Butler. What's that look like when Poole's back up to 30 and Bub gets a few more and Brogdon is there? So yeah, I think that's probably where you're at. Although I would like for them, like I said, to find a way to have that not be the case. So we'll see. Just those Butler kind of guys, I think, are the right kind of on the margins moves you need to find. if you listen to this podcast over the summer and did pre-draft stuff, I was pretty high on Jamal Shed. I thought he looked really good for Toronto tonight, and just you can always use more players like that, and ultimately they push other guys in practice and they bring sort of a defensive culture and mindset. And I think Butler can do some of those things for you too. So I'm happy that he's filling out the roster. Like he's maybe not here long term or whatever the case may be, but for right now, I think he's a serviceable enough guy that you could put in a game and not expect him to like totally blow it wide open for you. Whereas there are guys on this roster where I don't know that I feel the same way. Um, so let's just kind of wrap this one up here. Those were the major takeaways. We talked through what didn't work. I think sort of that starting lineup honestly looked a little too big and plodding and clunky for me. What did work was just getting the rookies involved, letting Sarr kind of be free. I think especially in the second half where he just kind of had some room to move and operate, looked a little more comfortable. That was honestly a pleasant surprise for me. That's going to be one of the typical post game categories for us. So that was nice. Major disappointments. There were a couple. Again, I'm not reading too much into like the Kuzma 1 for 7 or whatever the case may be, but just where Valanciunas was at, I think was a little underwhelming overall. Their next game is on Wednesday night against the Knicks at 7:30. We'll be back with more of this coverage. Going to be other Wizards content creators. So again, if you're liking these, just drop us some feedback. Always an iTunes review and stuff like that is helpful too. But just click that like button. That's the biggest one. And it tells us that, hey, we're on the right track here. So we're going to get a lot of different voices this season. Got probably 15 people I've talked to that podcast or do videos or TikToks or whatever the case may be, film breakdowns. I've got some of my friends that coach that are going to pick certain games and watch and try to break down, those things for us as well. And a few former players that, played overseas in that level of basketball too. So I think that they'll be able to come in and just provide different perspectives throughout the season. Appreciate some love here in the chat, but thanks to you all for listening. Like this is cool. It's just good to be back. Good to be talking Wizards. And like I said, we're going to just try really hard to provide you objective coverage, like the things that we think matter on the court and just like an honest what worked and didn't work without sugarcoating. This is as positive as I can be after a 30-point win because ultimately this is what this season is about. And if you're in the running to tank for, Jonathan Gavoni said this is one of the best drafts he's covered in, I think, like 20 years. And, I've worked with Jonathan for a little while there. And and he's not a big hyperbole guy when it comes to things like that. So this is the draft to be bad in. And I think that's what we're in for. So if we can just kind of take nights tonight, and find the silver linings as much as we can without being like, fluff propaganda machines, we're going to do our best to do that. And we want to hear from you. So if there are different things that you think work, hit us up and we'll always try to incorporate that in. As always, this was Believe in Wizards. We are brought to you by betonline.ag and Surfsides. I'm going to go have one of those right now to wind down from the game. And we will check you all next time.